When it comes to your retirement, do you want to have the same old plan everyone else has? Of course not. You're unique and have your own goals and dreams. Don't be treated just like a number. This is your retirement. So it's time to think differently. And you're in luck because you've found the Retire Your Way podcast with ILG Financial. At ILG Financial, you won't find generic, run-of-the-mill plans containing the same old cookie-cutter solutions. Dave, Chase, and the ILG Financial team focus on building one retirement at a time using their Think Differently philosophy. And that means your own comprehensive plan with customized solutions built to achieve just one goal, yours. So put on your Think Differently hats and get ready to take back control of your retirement today and for all the tomorrows to come. ILG Financial's Retire Your Way podcast was created just for you, and it's starting right now.
When it comes to retirement, do you want to have the same old plan everyone else has? Of course not. You're unique. You have your own goals and dreams. Don't be treated just like a number. This is your retirement, so it's time to think differently. And you're in luck because you found the Retire Your Way podcast with ILG Financial. At ILG Financial, you won't find generic run-of-the-mill plans containing the same old cookie-cutter solutions. Dave Lopez, Chase Lopez, and the ILG Financial team focus on building one retirement at a time using their Think Differently philosophy. And that means your own comprehensive plan with customized solutions built to achieve just one goal, yours. So put on your Think Differently hat and get ready to take back control of your retirement today. And for all the tomorrows to come, ILG Financial's Retire Your Way podcast was created just for you, and it's starting right now. A few times a year, we have the privilege of chatting with Social Security expert Hamilton Morales about the latest and greatest Social Security topics that keep us all informed and up to date. I'm Ron Stutz. Today, I'm with Chase Lopez and Hamilton Morales to discuss the biggest Social Security misconceptions. Well, first of all, Chase, how are you, buddy?
Ron, always good to hear from you. Happy to hop on the podcast today, talk to the listeners about something that I think is very universal, right? Social Security, everyone has questions about it. Everyone wants to know, hey, what should I do with Social Security and things like that. So I think it's going to be a great topic today for all the listeners.
And of course, we have our Social Security expert, Hamilton Morales. Hamilton, welcome to the show. And I know that you guys are going to talk about some very important things that everybody needs to know about Social Security.
Good morning, Ron and Chase. And yeah, we had no idea that some big news was coming down the pike before we set this podcast up. So I'm anxious to talk a little bit about, I don't even think it was on the agenda today, but some big news from Washington just came down about Social Security. So we'll hit on that in a little bit.
Yeah, okay. That's great. I think
you guys,
go ahead, Ron. Sorry.
Take it away and educate us all.
Yeah, so I think on the agenda, to your point, Hamilton, we had, I think the last podcast you had with Dave, we were talking about some of the biggest misconceptions of Social Security. So we wanted to hit on a couple of those that didn't get hit on in the last podcast with Dave. But why don't we start with some of the news that you were just kind of alluding to about, some stuff passed with Washington with respect to Social Security.
Yeah, so the, what the heck is the name of it? Something Fairness Act. Social Security Fairness Act, I guess is what it's called, has been sitting, it was passed by the House a long time ago and had been sitting in the Senate for months. And we obviously not going to get into the politics of everything, but obviously could have been voted on a long, long time ago. It wasn't. And in the wee hours of the morning, I believe Friday, maybe Saturday, it got voted on and passed. And basically what it did is it's eliminating the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. Now, this only has to deal with, it only deals with state and federal employees who do not pay into Social Security. So just real quickly, maybe that federal employee or state employee had a job prior to and did pay into Social Security and hit their 40 credits, so they do qualify for Social Security. But because they took a job where they didn't pay into Social Security moving forward, that Social Security benefit later on, when they turn it on would be reduced. That's the WEP, the windfall elimination provision. And the other piece of that puzzle is what I call its evil twin, GPO, government pension offset, had to do with that person being able to qualify for spousal and or widow's benefits because of that reduction. And so what the government has done is said, nah, we're going to get rid of it. And so last I heard, it's waiting for a signature. So take that as you will, but it's waiting for a signature. And once it's signed into law, that is going to eliminate that for several million state and federal, and we're talking police officers, firemen, teachers. The state of Ohio has the largest group that this would deal with. 97% of all of their state employees do not pay into Social Security. So this is pretty big, especially for that state.
Yeah, and I know with just where we're at, Hamilton, we're right outside of Washington, D.C., where we have a lot of federal government employees. So obviously a lot of our clients will be, or some of them, I should say, will be affected by that. I think, with all of these different changes, right, that we're going to see with this new administration coming in, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's important for all folks out there to kind of stay on top of these different rules as they're kind of changing. With these rules specifically, and you may not know, but based on your experience, will folks have to proactively reach out to Social Security to see, hey, am I eligible for some of these extra benefits, or will it kind of kick in automatically?
No, it's supposed to kick in automatically. Now, understand, two things you need to understand. Number one, we're dealing with the federal government. They're not known for their speed
That's true.
agility.
That's very true. That's true.
And the second thing is, they're dealing with millions of people. So I don't think it's just a click of a switch and everything is fixed. I think they have to go in and do things. I don't know all the specifics, but my understanding, again, there's not a ton of details about it, but from what I have read, this is supposed to happen automatically, and I would anticipate first quarter that people will see. So let's say somebody's already turned on their Social Security benefit. They did qualify, but now they're a state employee. They didn't pay in. Now they're retired, and they're taking their Social Security. It's a reduced amount because of the WEP. They should see an increase sometime in the first quarter back to where it should have been before the WEP. And then for those that are maybe widowed, that fall underneath the government pension offset, and they've either didn't qualify for the widow's benefit because their pension was too high, or they did get the widow's benefit, but they lost 2/3 of it because of their pension, they should be put back up to the normal amount what they should get, the full amount of the widow's benefit. So I anticipate all that to be done in the first quarter. We'll see, but that's what I anticipate.
Okay. It's pretty, what's the word? Timely that we were able to get you on today with that news passing. So I appreciate you passing that along to everyone out there that's listening. Obviously, stay in contact with not only your financial advisor, but just the news in general when it comes to this Social Security stuff, because obviously, to your point, Hamilton, nobody wants to miss out on any money that they're owed from Social Security based on these new rules. To that point, that kind of goes right into or dovetails into one of the misconceptions that we wanted to speak on today, and more of kind of big picture about Social Security in general. Was a lot of times folks are a little bit confused as to, my Social Security benefits, how are they calculated, right? A lot of people think, hey, they're calculated off my last 10 years of earnings. But the reality is that they take a lot more years of earnings into consideration with calculating your Social Security. So why don't you just give us a quick overview of how Social Security calculates, your benefit, and then, how many years of earnings that entails, and maybe if you don't work for a few years, how that would kind of impact your Social Security check, writ large.
Yeah, sure. So you're correct. It's not the last 10 years for sure. What they do is they take your highest 35 years of earnings and they adjust those for inflation through age 59. So let me explain that real quick because people get confused. if I'm over 60 and I'm still working, those earnings will still be calculated as part of my highest 35 years. But those earnings will not be adjusted for inflation. They'll be taken at face value. So the adjustment of inflation is only through earnings through age 59. So they'll take those, they'll add them all together. And by the way, so now we go back to the federal workers who only paid in, let's say they only paid in 15, 20 years. The rest of the time they didn't pay in because they had a job where they didn't pay into Social Security. So let's say that it was 20 years. Well, I just said they take your highest 35 years. Well, guess what? That means that they're going to have 15 zeros in their calculation.
Oh, I see. Yep.
Okay,
for the years that they weren't paying
your highest
in, right?
35 years. Even if we have to add in zeros, it's your highest 35 years. So they're going to add all that together, and they're going to divide by 420. Now, 420 equals the amount of months in 35 years. That's where they're coming up with that. So they want to find a monthly amount. And so once they divide that by 420, that's going to give you what's called your AMI, your average indexed monthly earnings. Then what they're going to do is they're going to take that number, and this is where it gets fun. They're going to run it through what's called bend points, B-E-N-D, bend points. There's 3 of them currently, and I'll give you 2024 numbers. So let's say your AMI was $10,000. So that's your average index monthly earnings, $10,000. And so what they're going to do is they're going to take the first $1,174 of that AMI, of that $10,000, and they're going to take 90% of the first $1,174. They're going to put that over to the side. Then they're going to take 32% of between $1,174 and $7,078. They're going to put that to the side. And then if there's anything left over, which in this case there is because it was a $10,000 AMI, they're going to take 15% of whatever is left. Put that to the side. They're going to add those 3 numbers together, and that is your full retirement age benefit amount. So as you can see, like somebody like me, I'm 53, and I look at my statement and it says, gives me a number. Well, they're making a lot of assumptions. First of all, I might barely have 35 years of earnings paid in. I might be a little short. That's number one. So they're assuming I'm going to continue to work, making the same amount of money until full retirement age. Number 2, they're using 2024's bend points. Well, bend points can change every year.
Gotcha.
And bend points don't lock in for an individual until the year they turn 62. So once they turn 62, whatever the bend points are for that year, that's going to be their bend points moving forward. So there's a lot of factors there that change for people that are a lot younger, that are not even near retirement yet. That's why I always tell people, the closer you get to full retirement age, the more accurate that number.
I gotcha. That makes sense. Okay, so we were just talking about how those bend points, they lock in at 62, right, Hamilton, as far as to determine what your benefit is going to be. Are those bend points, are those determined by like legislation, or is it adjusted for inflation, or how do they kind of come up with that calculation?
Yeah, that is a great question. I really don't know how they come up with that. I do know it changes every year. You can actually go on the Social Security website and you can look at the chart, and it goes way back to when they first started with the bend points. And so I don't know how they come up. Now, I will tell you this, the 90%, 32%, the 15%, those percentages don't change.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the only thing that changes is the dollar amounts.
Yeah, so no, that's fair. And it from the big picture kind of takeaway from that, kind of 3 things that I had wrote down as we were kind of talking there was, to your point, the Social Security statements, they're not going to be super accurate until you get closer to that full retirement age, right? Because
that is correct.
The bend points, and then also they're making some assumptions, right? They're assuming that you're going to work, so many years, right? And they're assuming you're going to make so many dollars, which is obviously going to change over time. And then the biggest kind of takeaway that I had was those years that you're not working, they do count as zeros. So let's take, to your point, let's say someone stops working at age 60, right? They're lucky enough to retire at 60 because they've, done a good job of saving for retirement, things like that. Well, if they stop working at 60 and they don't kick on Social Security until 67, full retirement age, where they're going to log 7 years of zeros when they come to calculate that AMI that you were talking about. Am I understanding that right?
Correct. So what's going to end up happening at that point is their statement's really going to be off, because remember, the statement is assuming they're going to continue to work. And so when when they go in and they sit down with Social Security and say, okay, I'm ready to turn my benefits on, and Social Security says, okay, here's what's going to go into your account starting next month, there's going to be a little bit of a difference,
Right.
Not huge, not massive, but it could be $40 a month.
Right. Well, and it's an average, right? So the more zeros you're adding to the average, obviously that's going to bring down the average, a little bit more. Okay, good. So the other one that I had on my list here, as far as misconceptions that, folks have about Social Security, is it's funny that we had these listed out prior to you hopping on, Hamilton, because I think both of these kind of apply to that, the new law that you were referring to that Congress is getting ready to pass. But it says the other misconception is, if I don't qualify for my own Social Security benefits, I cannot get spousal benefits. So big picture, spousal benefits. I know you and I have had an email exchange about this in the past. I think there's a little bit of a misconception just about spousal benefits in general, what they are and how they work. So why don't we start there with what is the spousal benefit, and, how can people kind of take advantage of that if they do qualify for it?
Well, let's break this down, because you're talking about two different types of people. So you've got one on one side that did work, but they never paid into Social Security. So let's take Ohio, for instance, and you've got somebody that comes right out of college and they go right into the teaching field where they do not pay into Social Security. So they never hit their 40 credits. So they never qualify. Okay. And so prior to this law change, because of the government pension offset, even though they never qualified for their own Social Security, they could not get spousal benefits or widow's benefits because their pension was too high.
Gotcha.
Okay? That's one set. Then you have the other set where, let's say you've got a husband and wife that they got married, fairly early in life. And, again, remember who we're talking about here. So that was not unusual. 18, 19, 20 years old. And she never went to work. Therefore, she never paid into Social Security, not because she was working and didn't pay in. She just never went to work. She stayed at home with the kids, started having kids early, whatever the case may be. So she never qualified because she didn't work. That's different. So I'm gonna spend some time on that one, because that one is the one that we have the biggest misconception on. And I've actually talked to advisors that have clients that this has happened to, where, and this is not only spousal benefits, but widow's benefits too as well. They thought, since they never worked, never paid into Social Security, didn't qualify for their own benefits, that they couldn't get spousal or widow's benefits. I mean, think about that for a second. We had one lady that actually happened to. She didn't think she'd get widow's benefits. She had gone years barely making it. Yeah. And then I can't remember how she got involved with this advisor that we work with. He called me up. We talked about it. I'm like, oh my goodness. She totally does. Called Social Security. Indeed, she does. Went in, filed. They were able to go back 6 months, which is good. That's as far back as they can go. And so she got a lump sum for that 6 months. Plus, she started getting the widow's benefit coming on a regular basis, which, I mean, it was just huge. So that was a huge misconception that just because you never paid in, because you didn't work, that you couldn't get those. And the answer is no. That's incorrect. You can. In fact, in spousal benefits as well. So now some things have to happen with the spousal benefit. The husband's got to turn their benefit on first.
Okay.
And number two, the spouse that wants the spousal benefit must be at least 62. So husband's benefit or the other spouse's benefit has to be turned on, and then the one who wants the spousal benefit must be at least 62. Those are the two things that have to happen before a spousal benefit can happen. And once that happens, they can file for spousal benefits, and it will equal up to 50% of that spouse's full retirement age benefit amount. Now, I'm very specific in how I said that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
that up to is important, isn't it?
Up to is very important because the person who wants spousal benefits, if they file for them at 62, they will not receive the 50%. It will be reduced based off of their age when they turned it on. If they want the full 50%, they have to wait until their full retirement age to turn on the spousal benefit. So this is key, especially for you, Chase, right? Because you're working with clients, you're putting these plans together, when to turn what on. And if they're assuming they're getting, let's just say, $1,500, and they go in to file and they find out they're only going to get $750, well, that's going to put a little kink in their plan, is it not?
Oh,
absolutely.
absolutely.
They were thinking they were going to get $1,500.
Absolutely.
Timing is huge.
Well, and I think the biggest kind of takeaway there is when you get with your advisor, your financial professional, right? Lean on them with some of these questions, right? Hamilton is a great resource to our team here. And if you think that, you should be getting more or, whatever the case may be, or big picture, right? Whenever you're building out your income plan and you're making some of these assumptions, you want to make sure that all of these assumptions are being checked and you're not, to your point, Hamilton, not making an assumption of you're going to be receiving X and then you end up receiving Y, and then that kind of changes everything that you're doing.
You're listening to the Retire Your Way podcast. I'm Ron Stutz along with Chase Lopez, and today's special guest is Hamilton Morales, our Social Security expert who is with us several times a year. And there are maybe some changes coming down the road. So the very important conversation we're having here today. A reminder, if you'd like to get in touch with ILG Financial, it is 540-720-5656. That is 540-720-5656, or go online to ilgfinancial.com to find out more. Now, back to more of the Retire Your Way podcast with ILG Financial. Once again, here's Chase Lopez.
Drilling back down a little bit on that spousal benefit, it sounds like the reason why they kind of implement that is because of the situation that you kind of laid out there, which is, hey, one spouse ends up working, one spouse does not, but they don't necessarily want to punish the spouse that was not quote unquote working, right? I'll put that in air quotes because, if you're raising a family or something like that, that's certainly work as well. That's right. That's right. So the way that the reason why they have the spousal benefit is to compensate for that.
Correct.
To compensate that spouse that wasn't working. Now, you mentioned a couple times in the story that you mentioned, and then you mentioned about filing for spousal benefit. Is that something, goes back to one of the questions I had before, is that something that someone would want to be proactive about as far as, getting with Social Security, not only for the spousal benefit, but also the widow's benefit as well?
Yeah, definitely. So widow's benefit for sure. They want to be proactive.
Right. Of course.
If they want to go ahead and file for that one, they will need to reach out. Now, I say that. So it all depends on the situation. So if the husband had already turned on their benefit, when they go in to file for their benefit, Social Security is going to ask them, are you married? Are you divorced? Oh, I'm married. Okay. You have your, who are you married to? What's their social, blah, blah, blah. And what they do is they link them up in the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when that person passes away, it's going to trigger Social Security to send a letter out to the surviving spouse saying, hey, just want to let you know you're eligible, or you could be eligible. They never say you are. They never pigeonhole themselves. You could be eligible for a widow's benefit of this amount, blah, 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 blah. So they will do that. Now, again, we're talking government agencies, so that could be a month or two before that comes out.
Right.
But you still need to file for that. When it comes to spousal benefits, it's a little different. So it really depends on the situation. If we're talking about the person who never worked, doesn't have their own benefit, yeah, they have to file for spousal benefits, okay, after their spouse turns theirs on. But in the event we're talking about spousal benefits for a couple that they both qualify for their own benefit, okay, but yet the lower of the two spouses, their benefit's low enough to where it's less than half of their spouse's full retirement age benefit amount that they qualify for spousal, that one's different because you're required to turn your benefit on. So both benefits have to be turned on, and then it's going to automatically happen. It's called deed filing. So it just really depends on the situation. And I know it's very confusing. That's why I do what I do. But when people ask me questions, when I give presentations, I do seminars across the country for different advisors, and one of the they ask tons of questions, and it's all my first answer is always, well, it depends.
Right.
Because it does. The situation dictates how it's going to go. You can't put everything in a box.
Right. And I think that's that's why we like having you on for the podcast, right? Is we can, talk about these things from a 10,000 foot view, right? And then kind of show some, hey, this is an example, right? With the example of the woman who didn't work her entire life. But the big picture, right? Or the takeaway would be, hey, your specific situation, not just with Social Security, right? But that's kind of an overarching theme of everything that we do as well, right? In the sense that, hey, every person's individual situation is a little bit different. So your plan has to be kind of tailored to your specific situation, right? And that's how you end up with the best outcomes, not only with investments, income planning, taxes, all the stuff that, Ron and I talk about on a regular basis here at the podcast, but also Social Security, right? Yeah. And you've kind of alluded to it a couple of times, and I can speak on this just because I've talked with several clients who have experienced the same thing, which is the Social Security office is not very helpful when you try to play out some of these scenarios, right? So I think it just kind of highlights even more so the fact that, hey, you need someone on your side that has a lay of the land of where this stuff is today, where it's possibly going in the future to, again, get the most out of this benefit that, you've paid into for a lot of folks.
Well, it's not just the most out of it. I mean, that would be great, right? I mean, first of all, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know when we're going to die.
Very true.
We don't know how to, if we're going to get the most out of it. It really comes down to this, Chase. It's not, can I get the most out of it? It's when can I turn it on that's going to be the most beneficial for me in my particular situation, which is different for everybody.
No, I think that's a great point.
Needs, how much income I need, what other income I have coming in. Am I married? Do they have a benefit coming in? There's just so many age you're gonna actually retire. What's your health history? What's your family's health history? I mean, there's so many things as an advisor you have to take into consideration in putting these plans together the best you can, because we don't have that crystal ball, and Social Security is a piece of that puzzle that we have to say, okay, yeah, who wouldn't want to maximize their benefit? I want to get everything that I put in there. Problem is, we don't know when we're going to die. So now the next thing is we got to make sure, when do we turn it on that's going to be the most beneficial for me in my particular situation? And that's what we have to go with. And that's where the numbers come into play, and 2 + 2 = 4, and all those different things that we have to look at, which is actually great because it's math and science. Kind of hard to argue with math and science, right?
That's exactly right. That's oftentimes whenever we're building out plans for folks, that is what I try to lead with, in the sense that we say, hey, at the end of the day, when we build out this plan, it's just going to be the math, right? It's not going to be us guessing or anything like that. And then, folks, now we can make an educated decision as to, hey, we want to go with route A or we want to go with route B. Well, Hamilton, I don't think I could have said it any better than you did there. So I appreciate you hopping on today. And next time we get together, I'm assuming that this Social Security Fairness Act will be, in full force. So that maybe next time we get together, we can kind of circle back on that and get into the nitty gritty of that, and talk about it a little bit more.
Chase, there could be more coming.
Yes.
If you're thinking about the campaign trail and all the things that were said, I'm hoping next time we get on the podcast together, maybe there's a possibility there could be legislation to eliminate taxes on Social Security benefits.
Yeah, that is something we were hearing a lot about. So certainly by the next time we get together, there will be at least, I would think, some sort of, plan or some talk of, how that's going to come to fruition.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out, but that would be a great episode if that were actually to happen.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been an incredibly helpful conversation, folks. I have learned a lot just by listening to you guys. And if you just joined us here, you've been listening to a special Retire Your Way podcast. I'm Ron Stutz, but today Chase Lopez has been here, as he often is, and along with Dave Lopez. But also our special guest today has been Hamilton Morales. You may hear from him more often in the future with this new administration coming up. And, who knows what's going to happen in 2025, but you can count on them to bring you up to date on what's happening. Hey, guys, thank you so much today.
Hamilton, thanks again for your time. Ron, I appreciate you as always, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, sounds good. Income, legacy, growth, it's all right here at ILG Financial, and it's about helping you plan for retirement your way so you can achieve your financial goals. Call ILG Financial at 540-720-5656, or you can go online to ilgfinancial.com to learn more. Thanks for listening to the Retire Your Way podcast with ILG Financial. Thank you, Dave and Chase Lopez, as always. The information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. The views presented today are those of Dave Lopez and do not necessarily represent the views of the Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Investment advisory services offered through Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Alpha Star and ILG Financial, LLC are independent entities. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Commission, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability.